We all went out and started buying stupid cars, big Mercedes, nightclubs, lap dancing clubs. Obviously, we were young, we come from council estates. We were just spending money like there was no tomorrow. I was born in Vauxhall Road in Liverpool in 1970. From there, lived there in flats for 6-7 years and moved into in between Everton and Liverpool's ground. It was a poor place. There was areas in Liverpool that were a lot better off, but for where we lived, like, it was really, really poor.
What sort of role models did you have, like, when you were growing up?
I'd say role models. My role models were people who were grafting, really, because they were the ones in nice clothes, nice cars. They were making money. They were getting what they want. Probably by the time I got to about 13, 14, I started hanging around with more of the older lads. And people always say to me I got groomed and exploited. No, I didn't, because it was me that approached them. They used to look after me. They give me a few quid. I'd go and get a pair of trainees, trackies, and I was asking them, could I do something to get more money? And in the end, I had a rally burner at the time. I think that was probably 84. I used to just then put stuff on in a bag and just travel either through Stanley Park or around it and drop drugs, money and stuff off. And obviously, when someone tells you not to look in a bag and you're a 14, 15-year-old kid, the first thing you do is look in a bag. And obviously, then I started sort of seeing guns and ammunition. And before you know it, I was in Stanley Park just shooting at trees and stuff like that. So I think that's where it all sort of spiraled for me. You know what? We started smoking weed at 11. I think from there, once you're smoking weed, you need to buy more weed. Then obviously you're doing little bits of burglaries and stuff like that. Never on properties, but usually businesses and stuff like that. Getting a few quid. I was getting a few quid off the lads for dropping stuff off. By the time I got to 17, I was selling bits of weed and stuff like that. And I'd stop sort of going on my bike and dropping stuff off. I just wanted to start being a bit more independent and started getting drugs off the lads. So obviously I started with speed and Moroccan, which was Rocky. We were smoking that, we were sort of selling it. And then along came the rave in probably 1988, 89.
Do you mind telling us about that?
Yeah, Quadrant Park, it was the first sort of rave dance venue in Liverpool. It was berserk. It was like walking into a crazy party. People had glow sticks, they were sweating, it was roasting up, people had the tops off, they were dancing around like lunatics. Everyone trying to hug you, and you know, you're a Scouser, aren't you? So what you do is you're pushing everyone away. Get away. But as soon as I had my first pill, believe me, I was right in the middle of it. And I think that was the best night of my life, I'd say, at the time. I wanted to go back the week after. Obviously, for all of us to go, some of my mates didn't have money and stuff. So first thing I done was went and got a load of pills and got them on tick. And went to Quadrant Park the week after. I think we'd sold them all within 2 hours. We realised it was easy to do. There was a niche in it. And if we worked with the right people and paid the right people, then obviously we'd take control of it. And before long, them hundreds of tablets went into thousands and thousands and thousands. And
was that when it first got serious then, in terms of?
Yeah, that's like 88, 89, 1991. That was when sort of rave all got really, really good. If we had 1,000 pills sold in 1 week, you'd take grand profit in it. Really good at maths, actually. Didn't go to school, but grams, kilos, tons, stuff like that, then I think every drug dealer's pretty good at maths. If they're not, they shouldn't be doing it.
And where do things go from there then?
I think it was like the 95, 96. I think a young girl died, Leah Betts, on ecstasy in Essex. And I think the whole country got a shook up over it. I think people were getting rid of pills because they thought they were killing people and stuff like that. And the sentences started going up. So instead of getting like a 4 or a 5, you were getting a 12 up to the 15.
So did you move away from the ecstasy
From the ecstasy we did. We just stuck with the pot. We were bringing like probably half a ton, something like that, back to the UK and just selling it and doubling our money on it. And we stuck with that for a few years. And then I got an introduction to a Scottish guy. Got us involved in the cigarettes. They were coming from the Far East. They were duty free, so you could probably buy them anywhere. He was getting them in. He asked us, could we start shifting them? And over a couple of weeks, we started shifting them. And I think we were getting about 28 to 30,000 sleeves a day for them.
How were you moving things then? Obviously, like you say, they were in vans, but
Yeah, we always had bill of ladings and stuff, so it was always freight or it was always ship. So we knew when they were moving and stuff like that. Everything was disguised. So, say for instance, I used to get water boilers like that in boxes. They'd all have empty insides with cigarettes in. I used to have reels of like cotton, but the cotton would be wrapped around 15, 20 times, but inside they'd be full of cigarettes. I had 3-piece suites in there. Everything was all about your cover in that time, because if you couldn't see it with the naked eye, then half the time you were getting it through. You'd probably get people coming up and buy the full lot in one day. So they'd come up, give you the money, they'd buy it. And my first one ever done was Barnsley. Done it all. Had bags of money everywhere. In the hotel room, when my mate come, the cash was everywhere, because it was the first time we'd had near £500,000 in cash in front of us. And I think we sat there probably for about 7 hours and had to count it by hand. And I think the next suggestion after that was we can't do this again. We needed to get counting machines. If you look at it, it was between 380 and 500,000 pounds a day cash. And we used to sort of, every week we used to cash that up. Do you know what I mean? So every week you were talking 2.5, 3 million quid.
What risks were there involved in what you were doing?
Do you know what? There weren't really, in the cigarette game, there weren't really sort of many risks, because it was a white collar crime and the police didn't want to know anything. It was always HMRC, it was customs officers that wanted to get you. It was tax evasion. So for me, it weren't really a risk. I knew the jail was low. Obviously, I didn't know sort of the tax evasion side of it at that time, but I weren't really, to be honest. It was just, you were earning a lot of money. I think the worst thing for us was we all went out and started buying stupid cars, big Mercedes, nightclubs, lap dancing clubs. Obviously, we were young. We come from council estates. We were just spending money like there was no tomorrow. We knew something weren't right when we got caught. So I was in the gym, mate. We just had a load brought into a place in Liverpool called Kirby, and customs officers come into the gym with me. I'd just been on the phone as well. So as they've come, I've seen them walking over, and as they've come to get me, I was pretty big then, and I've just put it on all of them. All I needed to do was get me chip out of that phone and swallow it, which I did. Do you know what I mean? So they tried to grab hold of me, pushed them out the way. I run out the back doors. I got my chip out my phone, swallowed it and threw the phone. So they only really got my personal phone. Obviously, we were nick banged to rights. We thrown a guilty plea in, but the Scottish guy and one of his Asian mates both went not guilty. And I said to me, mate, something's not right here. And I always remember this fat Scottish guy going, I can't do jail, I can't go to jail, it'll kill me. And I put a PII on, which is a public inquiry. And they needed to tell us if there was a snitch in the case. Well, the next day they let him off scot-free. So I said to me, solicitor and barrister, get in and get me every cigarette case he's been involved in. And then I come back, he'd been involved in 7 and walked on all of them. He'd done it to 7 other people and set 7 other people up exactly the same way. So he was what you call Asian provocateur. So he was working with the customs, and the customs were taking people he put in and letting him off. He'd earn his money and let him go. That was part of his deal. I got 4 years, and because I hadn't been in trouble for 3.5 years, they knocked it down to 3.5 years. And then I got a £14 million fine, confiscation order for tax evasion. I had interest in nightclubs, sunbed shops, property. They just took the lot anyway. They froze all my assets, took me half of my house, and just basically wiped the floor with us, really.
How old were you?
I was probably about 29 at the time.
So you were facing jail at 29 years old?
Yeah.
How did you feel about that?
Well, to be honest, it wasn't bothering me. I always knew I was going to jail. I always knew in life I was going to jail no matter what. It was just where, when and how. I just wanted to go in, do my jail and get out to my kids. Unfortunately enough for me, because it was a white collar crime, I ended up in open conditions after about 4 or 5 months anyway. So being in open conditions, it was better for me, because you're open, you can walk around, you can do what you want. But one thing I did do in prison was meet other people like me, and other people who were big players in certain games. And because I had all my assets frozen and stuff like that, I was angry. And I thought, when I'm getting out, I'm getting every single bit of it back by hook or crook, and I'll get it. After doing the sentence and that, I got out in, I think it was June 2005. And got straight into drugs. I'd always dealt drugs anyway. Just now I was just doing it at a bigger scale. And look, weed was always the best thing for me, to be honest, because the jail was lower. You get caught with coke, you're getting high sentences.
And that was weed you say you were bringing?
Yeah, that was weed, yeah. And obviously got caught with coke as well. So we were doing all the coke as well. Obviously there was intelligence, the police were watching us and all that. But it came down to someone who got arrested and couldn't keep his mouth shut. And that turned out to be one of my uncles. So one of my uncles made a statement against me basically, and basically got me 19 years down to 12.
At what point did you realise that it was him that had done that?
He got arrested. He was supposed to, I think I just had a ton of weed delivered. I had a Charlie in there, coke as well in there. He took a key of weed to someone, but 45 minutes, the person was still waiting for it. So I went on a trip to try and find where he was, and then no sign of him. So after that, I went round the back of one of the police stations and I seen his van in there. And then it was from there I knew something had happened, and I thought, is he staunch enough to let it go or to say anything? And he come out, he got bailed, come out, swore on my mum's grave that he didn't say nothing. And then I got raided 3 times, and on the 3rd time they kept me in.
What's your relationship like with your uncle now?
You know what, I don't wish him no harm, I don't. Because he was always a good man for me growing up. But you want to swear on your sister's grave that you haven't done something and you do, then to me, no, I can't live with that, I'm sorry. Ended up in strange ways, but when I got arrested for it, they arrested a lot of my family. They've never been involved in my life. They've never sort of been involved in any criminality whatsoever. They've always sort of worked all their lives. My dad, I had to spend a night in jail with my dad. He was a 68-year-old man. I think waking up in the middle of the night and looking on the bottom bunk, obviously I kept him with me on the night. We were all in court, and seeing him in a bed, I just thought, nah, I'm not doing this. And I ended up taking another 5 years for them all, so I could get them suspended sentences, keep all them out of jail. And it was my fault. I took it on the chin. I wouldn't never, ever, ever in a million years let my dad or any of my family go to prison for something that I'd done. From Oakwood, I tried to get back to Kirkham or Thorncross, back up north where I lived, and they wouldn't have it. I ended up on the Isle of Sheppey in Kent. And I think a big hit to me was watching my kids travel 16 to 19 hours on a round trip to come and see me for an hour, and I thought, I'm not doing it no more. I think while I was in Stamford Hill, I was still a big lump, skinhead. And I always remember this day going in to get me key, for my room. When you're in your cat, you have your own key for your own door. And I remember going in and there was some baldy fella sitting there with a tweed jacket on and corduroy bloody trousers, and the screw was there, and I said, Keith, can I get me key? He went, yeah, go ahead, Scouse. And I heard, Scouse, you sound like a Jedi. Jedi's someone who lives over in Birkenhead from Liverpool. And I've turned around and went, who are you talking to, baldy? He went, you look like one with your cords on. So I had proper banter with him for about 5 minutes, but having not bad, funny banter both ways. He was from Manchester. And I went, anyway, baldy, who the fuck are you on my wing? And he went, I'm glad you asked that. He went, my name's Jim Padley, I'm the new #1 governor. I went, now I thought to put my mouth in it again. But he turned out to be inspirational, Jim. I was sick and tired of watching people getting let out of prison of a morning and coming back in the night time. They've got nowhere to live. They get a £47 and a train warrant to go out and get food and stuff. They'll smack someone and come back in overnight. I couldn't get my head around that. I'd been writing on my bed every night at 8, 9 o'clock when I was on my own, just about stuff I could do when I get out. And then I'm sitting there a couple of nights later and I'm just looking at all the paper and I'm thinking, I've got an app here, and I've got an app that will help people rehabilitate. So I spoke to Jim Padley about it, and he said, look, I'll back you. He said, but one of the main things is, he went, you frighten the life out of me. He went, you're about 16, 17 stone now. You're built like a brick house. You're a Scouser with a big mouth and you've got a skinhead. And I think at that time I had 14 months left to serve. And I just said, look, if you back me with it, I said, by the time I get out, I went, you won't even recognise me. And I remember going to Jim's office with about two weeks left to serve. I'd knocked on his door, I'd lost 5 stone, I grew my hair and he had glasses on. He didn't even know who I was. And he just looked, he went, yeah, can I help you? I went, yeah, I mean to do a presentation for you. And like when you've done your presentation and the room was just quiet, and I thought, this is not going to work. And then everyone started clapping, and Jim got up and he went, best thing I've ever seen while I've been in the prison for 30 years. So 2018 into 19, we had the app developed. I got the first 12 people who were still serving prisoners out of HMP Thorncross, and I took them to work on the King's Dock car park. So it was all about getting the right training, the right accreditation. So I'd done a 2-week introduction to construction. On the last day, whoever was in that presentation, every single person got a job. I think in the past, sort of 16 months, I've had 250 coming out of prison every day. Some of them with 2 years, 2.5 years left to serve. They come out of prison at 6 o'clock on a Monday morning, go back into prison at 7 o'clock of a Monday night, and they do that 5 times a week. I'm not going to fill them with any crap. I'm going to tell them, I can't guarantee you a job, but I can guarantee you all your training. I can guarantee you an interview. It's what you do in that interview that will get you the job. We're giving people new lives, if you get me. I like working with people who are in the prison. There's certain convictions we won't work with and we can't work with, but there's certain convictions that people just need a hand around the shoulder and just guide it in the right way. Like, I think now we've been winning lots of awards now, but my award's watching people go to work every day and go back to prison overnight and get themselves ready for the outside world, because they've got the opportunity to stay in that job when they get out as well. But most importantly, they're supporting their missus and kids who've been travelling everywhere to see them. My 2 kids mean everything to me, and for what I've put them through all my life and the years of being away from them, now we're making up for it. You know, they're the ones who have to travel up and down the country and come and sit on my knee for an hour and stuff like that. You know, I've got a new life and I love it.
What would your advice be then for anyone, you know, that is involved in crime?
I'm never going to tell you to suck eggs, but what I will tell you is I've been there, seen it, done it. You'll live a better life without being involved in crime, that's for sure.
The second period of my employment there, I was drinking heavily, massively, to try and, I don't know, maybe I just couldn't cope with it. You know, the stress was horrible.